Hello and welcome, I'm Tafara Gadamu. My guest today, Bilen Aynu, left Ethiopia at age 16 and came back 16 years later. But in the last 6 years, she became a successful restaurateur here in Addis Ababa with a lot more to come. A very warm welcome to the program.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
We're airing in March, although not on March 8th, but March reminds me of women's issues and our ability to be gender sensitive in this age, in this globalized world. You left Ethiopia, and I specifically want to talk about your business and how you became successful, and whether there are any lessons that we have to learn from that experience. I'm sure there are plenty. You left Ethiopia when you were 16 to pursue your higher education in the United States. Is that correct?
That's very correct. I left when I was 16. You mentioned March, so what comes to mind is, even though I left when I was 16 and all these gender issues that we are discussing, life being a chance or fate, I was never really, I was protected from those gender issues.
Because you happen to be born in Addis Ababa, into a family of educated people.
Exactly. I was very fortunate, privileged.
What I call the exception.
The exception. I had education, good education. So when I left at 16, some of these issues that we were discussed, I was very protected from. But it didn't take me very long after I left to really look back and say, I come from Ethiopia. The stereotyping of who I should be as an Ethiopian, and I realized I just don't represent the majority. So we are an exception, for sure.
So you pursued your education, but off camera, when doing the spring interview, you told me that the first day you arrived in the first year that you were in the U.S., that was the year when you decided to come back to Ethiopia, go back from that side. Why was that? When you leave Ethiopia and you have established parents and family here, you always think you're coming back after, getting your degree. Because the reason you're leaving is to get a degree. The first year I was there, I always thought I was returning to come back home to my parents to continue life. Once I got there, like I said, I realized I'm very fortunate and privileged. And if I return to Ethiopia, and in my case, my parents also left shortly after I left. I didn't have parents to come back home to financially. That's a good excuse. That's a very good excuse. Because that's the story of every Ethiopian.
When I left, shortly after, they couldn't support me financially because they lost everything here. So it was a misfortune, but it was also a blessing in disguise because it taught me a lot. I had to step up, really provide for myself. Everything I took for granted, I couldn't take for granted anymore. I still completed my degree. I was 21 when I completed my degree. So a lot of misfortune happened in my immediate family. At the same time, I also realized all the opportunity that I had, I was still fortunate. So I decided to come back in 2002.
Welcome back
21.
to that.
And I realized I can't afford to move back. There was no way I could financially move back to Addis at that point. So instead of pursuing a career in corporate America, which was, I did information systems from my undergrad, for some reason, corporate America I was never emotionally committed to that path. The financial rewards were great. So instead, I wanted to pursue a PhD. In information systems, I thought that would give me the lifestyle I want to. I did a lot of volunteer work in undergrad, and looked back, and mothers, orphans, anything related to Ethiopia, I passionately got involved.
You wanted to stay connected with Ethiopia.
Yes,
that's what
that was just my way of just really giving my life meaning. The quest for, why am I Ethiopian? Why was I privileged? And how do I give back? So that gave me some fulfillment. So I did pursue that. In 2002, I said, let me do a PhD, and I can do anything with my life when it comes to coming back here and giving back. That didn't happen. I was preparing for a PhD program, and I got a job in the meantime. With information systems, the job was a PeopleSoft project. PeopleSoft HR was very popular then. 16,000 employees, merging another company with a 60. It was a lot of data, a very good job. When it was time to go back to the PhD, I made a rational commitment to stay on that corporate America path. It wasn't what I wanted to do, but...
You felt derailed?
I was derailed in a bit, but it also made sense. I started a family, so I had to provide for that. I went back to graduate school. I got a graduate degree. So 10 years of just a fast track of a corporate career, starting a family, checking off the American dream. And then 2012 came around. Of course, there was a lot of learning in 10 years, right? A lot of personal, professional. And when I got to that point where I had checked off everything I wanted to do, I realized maybe it's time, because I still was not fulfilled. And in 2012, where there is a will, there's a way. Let's just put it that way. I was willing to return. And financially, obviously, I was a bit better off than 2002. I made the decision, but I had never been back to Addis. So it'd been 15 years. So.
And you made that decision without visiting Ethiopia in 15 years?
Correct. And I think that was one of the pillars of moving back. You got to make the decision before you actually come here and plan. Because when I visited, it wasn't as easy. I mean, everyone knows when you come back after 15 years, so much had changed for the good and the bad, right? I couldn't wrap my head around the growth of the place, but I couldn't also wrap my head around all the inconveniences and the challenges of moving back. But because I had made a decision, we really made a way. I returned back, packed up, and said, I'm going to move to Addis and make a living.
But you didn't decide which?
No, I had no idea what I was going to be doing when I returned. But I was self-employed. I had a boutique consulting in Arizona, so I could work from anywhere in the world. I had clients in the U.S. That would require some traveling. And I was a mother at that point, it wasn't as easy. So I did have some financial support coming back. So I had clients in the U.S. I kept doing the consulting work from here, which was very difficult with the type of networks that we have. So the first year I got here, continued doing my remote consulting and trying to find a way to make a living besides, because the consulting that I was doing, I was the only one that could do it. I was not going to employ so many people with that. So I wanted to find something where we can start a business and employ people. And it happened to be Savor, a restaurant that I own now. And really...
It just came straight to you and then you said, this is what I want to do.
No, it was not straight at all. I've never thought I would be in the food business. Actually, it was...
Because you've got no culinary background.
No culinary background.
And also, I guess to be able to run a restaurant, you need to have two things. Number one, you need to have that culinary experience. Maybe I'm wrong. And the second thing is you need to own that building because you could be kicked out any time. So without having both, you just run into this business. I think that's quite a daring move. Would you agree?
It was very daring. Now that I look back, it was very daring. But I think a lot of things aligned for us. We ran into this space. It was a very big space in that area. When we were looking at a service business, the good thing is as a service model, we'll hire a lot of people. So that aligned with the vision that we had. But food was a gap. That culinary was a gap in Addis. When I first moved here, I would spend a lot of time working remotely at Sheraton, for example, because not because I was looking for a 5-star hotel, but the hygiene, the consistency, the parking. So there was a gap in the market. So that was very clear in my head. The ability to do it, I had a systems background, right?
But I would think otherwise because it's all full of restaurants and eateries and what have you in this town.
Yeah, but between where I was staying and Sheraton, there was a lot of eateries, right? The reason I went there is because there was no consistency in town. So I thought of it and I said, we really need a place that has a fast food model. We need a system where all these casual food places can have some level of quality food that has hygiene, and you don't have to go to some of these places that I'm going to. So let's create a system where we can have a consistent product with consistent service. And how do we do that? So it was a lot of learning from scratch. Okay, it was a new environment. I have worked in human capital for, at least at that point, for 14 years. I knew how to manage talent, but it was a different type of talent here. So there was a lot of learning to do. But I'm a learner by nature, so it was a good challenge. I learned everything from scratch. Designing menus, how to hire service employees, how to train service employees. But it was a good challenge, and it worked out pretty well.
You launched this when, 6 years ago?
We launched it 5 years ago, in March, actually. So it's officially 5 years.
It made business sense, right?
It did make business sense. It's not as easy to manage per se because it's a 16-hour-a-day operation. It's open from 7 a.m. to 11 p.m. And it's been open 7 a.m. to 11 p.m., 365 days for 5 years. Saver's been down for 1 day for maintenance, planned maintenance. And ever since we've done that maintenance at night.
That's pretty unusual.
That's very unusual for Addis, now that I've been here for 5 years. To be open 365 days and to do that consistently for 5 years, I know is a miracle.
How many employees do you have?
We have 68 employees. We have 80% of women. We plan to grow that to 300 employees in the next 5 years and hopefully grow that woman population to 90%.
Wow. And I understand that you don't spend so much time working there, right?
Yeah, well, there was a learning lesson in the 10 years that we were in the U.S. and Arizona. We owned a business. There's a saying, when you have to be involved in the business, you're self-employed, versus when the business actually runs without you, then it's a business. Huh? So we had that in mind setting it up. We never really had a role. We set it up to run by itself. So it was part of the model. It wasn't that, and when I'm away on purpose to do other things, because the model is only successful when it can run on its own.
And your clients are basically middle-class Addis Ababans.
Yeah, we have very consistent clients, and we're very grateful for them. They appreciate our service, and we try to keep it consistent, though. We are in the back.
Do you think you're doing that?
I do believe so. Yeah.
Because there's a steady stream of...
It's been a steady business, and we do keep a close eye on making sure our products are consistent, our service is consistent, and that's the feedback I do get from the public as well.
Interesting. You want to replicate that too. You call it savoir, right? You want to replicate it elsewhere in town, right?
Yes. So it was set up to be a scalable business. So everything we set up from scratch, we made sure that we can... The fact that it does not need me also means that it can be scalable, right? So it's a small growth business is what it's referred to. So we plan to scale it.
So also you're planning of running a similar but a little bit different kind of venture. You want to have a hotel, and you have also a restaurant. And
yeah. So this new venture, like everything else in my life, just came across. My older sister actually moved back from the U.S. Not too long ago. She was looking for a project, and she was looking to start a business. And we run into this location, a very great location, but it just happened to have hotel rooms along with the location that I left. So we're going to be expanding this. We're going to be doing food, co-working, service offices, hotel rooms, and also doing really a very productive space where my clients can stay productive and healthy. And that's coming soon.
There are a few, but not as complete as what you're projecting, I guess.
Yes. These are not new concepts.
No, I mean in Ethiopia, in Addis Ababa.
Yeah. They're not new concepts. I think what we'll be providing here will be a one-stop shop. I think a lot of the learning I have is from my own experiences, with the traffic that we have going on, with a lot more working mothers. I think we do need a space that's very productive where time is of value, and you can actually get things done. And I think that is what this new space will be. And I'm very excited about it.
When is it taking off?
End of May is what we, timelines are always fluid here, but I think we'll start in May.
Interesting. Was being a woman an issue as you were trying to make sense out of your business?
The gender issues in Ethiopia, in the U.S., the first 16 years of my life in Addis, like I said, I was protected. So I didn't even know if I was a boy or a girl. I mean, to me, I was just a human being. Once I left Ethiopia, not only gender, but race was also an issue in the U.S. It took me a while to realize that because race is not an issue here. But I was young, okay? Everything was young for me. I graduated at 21. My first job, even becoming a leader, I was a young woman of color. I was an immigrant. So those things were always an issue. I mean, it was not my default mode to pick that up, but they were always an issue, right? We had to work twice, I think, more to gain the... we work so hard, we don't realize men don't work as hard.
Okay.
Coming back,
I'm here.
though,
I'm listening.
coming back, though, I think it's the first time I realized gender is such an issue here. Here, race wasn't an issue, right? Because I was Ethiopian. But for the first time in my life, I realized I would have a man make a phone call for me, the phone call that I had to make, knowing it would be easier for a man to get something through. Or driving in town, the way you were treated as a woman. Everywhere I went, I just picked up that how people treat women was different from men. That was quite an issue for me the first year or two, and you become more tolerant as you go and you know how to handle it. But
it's not that it improved, but you kind of got
you're
used
very
to
much
it.
aware of it, right? So the gender bias here is obviously there, and we live with it every day.
So are you saying that this is what pretty much women in business face in this country?
Yeah, I think you learn how to handle it. I think the bias is there, and it's part of the journey. The bias might be less and less as we go, and I know for my children it will be quite different, I think. But it was much more obvious when I first returned as getting assimilated back into the culture. But now, you find ways to deal with it, right? I still manage a lot of men under me, right? And you find ways on how to portray yourself as a good leader, whether you're a man or a woman. In my case, I'm a woman, but I'm much more tolerant to it, and I feel very comfortable in this space now.
So what do women need to do to be successful in business? That's something that you've been trying to address in the course of the discussion, but I just want you to be specific. What are the key things that we have women, Ministry of Women and so on. We have very many NGOs catering women's needs and so on and so forth, but that way you cannot be successful. I think that the course has to be reversed, I guess. That's why I'm trying to tap into your experience. What do women need to do to be successful in this country? I mean, it's not just business women, but others in academia.
Yeah, I think women need confidence. I find a lot of women, just because of the bias of the culture, even within their ability, they don't have the confidence to lead. I'm a big believer as a woman. We do have the ability. We are capable. So when I walk out every morning, I never think I'm a woman versus I'm a man. Where I got that confidence could be the way I'm wired or my background, the first 16 years not knowing, I'm a girl and I have the same opportunity. My advice to women would be the advice I give every day when I see women is you are capable. You are confident. We do work twice as hard. I really do believe that. That just makes us stronger and better. And we just need to believe in our abilities.
Well, on that positive note, I think we have to end this discussion. Thank you very much indeed, Bilen. It was
Thank you
a
so much.
pleasure
It was
having
a
you on my
pleasure.
show.